Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and today I want to talk about the cover art for Strange Tales. I'm going to post this up on the blog, so this will accompany the cover art and a GIF that shows the cover art being developed. The cover art for Strange Tales is done by Jackie Musto, who did all of the interior images, with the exception of the borders, for the Wandering Heroes of Ogregate game and for Sartorius. And she did the cover for Wandering Heroes of Ogregate and the various supplements that we've released for Wandering Heroes of Ogregate. And so, this was I think a more challenging cover than we've done in a while, because it's, number one, it's a new genre, but number two, that we wanted it to hold a lot of information. We wanted it to convey a lot, and that I think is very tricky to do. So it came out really nice. So what I want to do is I want to just talk about the cover elements. I'm not an artist, so I can't really comment on technique or anything like that. But I wanted to talk about what each thing represents and why it's there and how it relates to the game. So if you look at the cover, you can see that there's a number of figures on it, and if we go to the left, you see that there's a ghost. And one of the things that I wanted to do is the genre that this belongs to comes from sort of the writings of people like Pu Song Ling and Yuan Mei, and that genre, it's often just described as ghosts and fox spirits. That's like tales of ghosts and fox spirits. It's not like the proper name for it, but it's just sort of like quick shorthand, because there's so many ghosts and fox spirits. And so we have a ghost, and then if you go to the upper right hand corner, that's a fox spirit seducing a scholar. And in the center we have, in the game we call them painted maidens, but there's a creature that comes from the Painted Skin story, Hua Pi, and the movies that are based on that story. So if you've seen Painted Skin or Painted Skin Resurrection. Now, Painted Skin Resurrection is interesting because in that one, if I recall, and this might be a translation issue, but I believe in Painted Skin the Resurrection, they sort of adjust the character for the sequel so that she becomes more of a fox spirit. I don't remember exactly. I had to rewatch them again, but I remember there being some kind of difference. In the original story, she is not a fox spirit. In the original story, she is a monster who paints a skin for herself that she is able to use to seduce and then kill people or trick them. And so it's a lot more like the first Painted Skin movie, or the Painted Skin movie from the 90s by King Hu. And there's a much earlier one from the 60s that has great makeup and special effects for the time, but I've never been able to find it with English subs, so I've only been able to see it just as images across the screen. It's definitely an enjoyable movie. You can probably find versions of it with no English subs, but the getting it with the English subs I found to be difficult. I can't remember the year it came out off the top of my head. I think it was like 63, but I might be wrong. It might be 65 or some other date, but the effects are really cool. And so that's what we have in the center. And this one was tricky because we wanted to sort of initially it was going to be sort of more like having the face peel off or something like that, but then that might look like a zombie. And so I think that the effect is really interesting. You have sort of the monster underneath. You have sort of the torso, but the skin is sort of falling off, but it almost has like a collar or cape effect, and it looks, I think it looks spectacular. It looks really nice. And then we have the yellow flowers, which are a recurring theme. Yellow is kind of recurring, and that has to do with an adventure in the book. And I also just wanted the color yellow. I like sort of bright colors like that in the artwork. And so that's why in the House of Paper Shadows we have like a pink tone to the cover. In this we have there's like a yellow and green. And if you look at Tournament of Dalo, that's really interesting because that's sort of colorful and dark at the same time. But there's a lot of sort of like reds and things like that. And I like getting those kind of colors in our art. And so in this one, I decided it would be good to try yellow, and I talked to Jackie first because I'm not an artist and I don't know, and I think if I remember the conversation, she felt confident that that it would work. And so and again, I don't know enough about coloration to say whether yellow or green is the dominant color, but there's definitely like a yellow, green, white thing going on, and I really like that. And then we have a logo which was made by I don't know if I can credit the person, so I'm not going to say who it was, but it's somebody who's been very close to us, reading a lot of the game material, been very helpful, giving feedback, and has a knack for graphic design, and so the same person who helped me with some other graphic design elements because I don't have any graphic design skills. So now the subtext underneath, the subheader. Right now, it's just as a game of supernatural horror set in the lands of ancient China. I don't know if that's going to remain the tagline under the big header, but we're going to have a tagline like that. That was just what I for the purposes of putting a mock-up together, I told Jackie to use that language. I may keep it though because I find sometimes we get a little bit too vague with our titles. We try to be too smart for our own good, and a game of supernatural horror set in the lands of ancient China is pretty direct, and so I might just go with that. I kind of want people to know what it's all about, so it might not be that exactly, but I think I'm going to go more for that sort of style. And then we have beneath the central pagoda in the image, we have 4 characters, and in Strange Tales, the characters are so I should say the mechanics for the game are somewhat different from Ogre Gate. It's technically a variation on Ogre Gate. You can think of it a little bit like how BX is different from AD&D, just to use like a really popular example. The mechanics are not like D&D. I don't want to mislead people because I know that people might come to it thinking it'll be D&D and then they'll be disappointed. So it's not mechanics like that, but the difference between Wandering Heroes of Ogre Gate and Strange Tales of Song Ling will be a pretty similar divide of difference. So in Strange Tales of Song Ling, you have character paths, and those are like classes. And in Wandering Heroes of Ogre Gate, everything's point by. In Strange Tales of Song Ling, there's only 3 defenses. In Wandering Heroes of Ogre Gate, there's 6. Now, you can easily sort of convert those base 6 defenses to the 3 defenses in Strange Tales of Song Ling. But the point was just to keep it simple. There's no, in Ogre Gate, one of the things that you sometimes have to juggle in your head as a GM or as a player is, does this affect resolve or wits? Does this affect evade or parry? You don't have to worry about that in Strange Tales of Song Ling because I wanted it to just move fast. And I wanted character creation to be really quick because I wanted a higher level of lethality. So I felt that it was really important to make it so that the players aren't sitting there fiddling with a point buy the whole time. There are some minor point buy elements when you pick your path that does sort of allocate where you spend some of your points, but it's very fast. And so I feel like we sort of got it to where we wanted it in terms of getting into the game fast and playing the game fast, and also in terms of the level of lethality in the game. Because in Ogre Gate, the scale of power, your wounds increase over time, and you become very resistant to the horrors of the world. In Strange Tales of Song Ling, even if you have swordsman-like abilities or magical abilities, you're still vulnerable. I wanted there to be that horror experience in the game, and so I had to sort of restructure the scale as a result. The characters don't have as many wounds. Monsters have fewer wounds, but they're more dangerous. So if you look at this image, though, these are the 4 character paths that are available to you. So on the left we have the Scholar, and the Scholar is it's sort of like the character from a Chinese ghost story. You find these characters in Strange Tales all the time, just sort of the bumbling scholar type, or the poor scholar, or the hopelessly in love with a ghost scholar. So I thought that that was obviously an essential character to have. It was kind of a challenge to come up with mechanics that I was comfortable with, that reflected what a scholar can do. And we played around for a while because for a time the scholar was stuck not being able to do a whole lot in combat situations, and I didn't want to just sort of give them something for combat that felt like well, we're making them combat ready when they really shouldn't be. So they're primarily an investigation class. They have a lot of skills, and they also have access to resources as they increase in ability, and they have an ability called frantic research, and this allows them in combat to try to come up with a tactical solution to the problem that will give like a bonus if they're able to voice that. So what you would picture in this situation is, they're frantically going through their books looking for a historical example that matches this one, or looking for the weakness of a monster. And if one exists, they might find it and they'll get a bonus. So it ended up working really well in playtest. And those are the kinds of mechanics I'm usually a little bit wary of. So I really made sure that it worked, and I think we got it to where we liked it. And so then if you look to the right of that image, and by the way, I think that scholar looks tremendous. We have the ritual master. The ritual master encompasses a lot of different character types. It could be anything from like a Taoist priest who's trying to dabble in darker arts, or attain longevity. Someone who is from another land that just knows strange magics. You can encounter characters like this in Tales from Songling. So it holds a lot, and their type of magic is it takes more time to perform. It's more dangerous, but it's potentially more powerful. They can do all kinds of crazy things, and they're a little bit they're a little bit of a darker character type. And then next to that we have the Wandering Sword. The Wandering Sword is basically kind of like a martial hero. They're not quite at the level that you have in Ogre Gate, but they have kung fu. They have the ability to evade attacks and things like that. And you see these characters in the stories all the time. And I think this one really captures the chivalrous hero archetype really well. And there's a fairly even mix in a lot of these stories when you do encounter them of men and women as martial heroes. And it's not, some of these stories go, like if you look at the really early stuff that inspired Pu Songling, like if you go back to stories from like the Tang Dynasty and stuff, you still see even that early, these kinds of characters, these martial hero characters. And a lot of times they have the kinds of abilities that you come to associate with genres like wuxia. So it's still kind of like early on. I have a book of stories from the Tang Dynasty, and there's a story where somebody meets a female martial hero, and she's got, if I remember, it's some kind of lightness kung fu type ability. That's what it comes across as in the story. If you see the movie Touch of Zen, that's based on a Pu Songling story. The supernatural elements of there are supernatural elements in the movie, but the kind that were in the story have been taken out and replaced with story. The original story is quite different. But it's similar, and if you pay attention, Touch of Zen has a creepy vibe to it. Like it kind of feels like a horror movie. And after that, you see King Hu exploring that territory. I think there's a movie, Legend of the Mountain. I can't remember. I don't know if that's the exact title, but it's a really good movie, and it's kind of similar, but it's more directly supernatural. And Painted Skin, obviously, which I think is it's funny. The more I watch that movie, the more I realize what a great film it is. I would definitely encourage people to watch it. It feels a little bit out of time. It feels like it's not quite in sync with the stuff that was coming out at the time, but it's got a real classic sort of horror vibe to it. And so I would definitely recommend people checking it out. But anyways, that's the Wandering Sword character. So they have kung fu techniques and block, and I don't know. I like the way this one came out. And then to the right of that, we have the Buddhist monk, who's there's not a Buddhist monk path in the game, but there's a demon hunter path, and the demon hunter path is open to all kinds of characters. It's not just Buddhist monks. It could be a Taoist priest. It could be, sort of like in a Chinese ghost story, the Wu Ma character. You could have sort of that a character like that. You could be like all the variety of demon hunters from a Chinese Odyssey, conquering the demons. There's a lot of things that you could be, but it basically, they have a little bit of everything. They have a little bit of fighting. They have a little bit of magic, but their magic's a little bit different than the magic of the Ritual Master. Their magic is more combat oriented. And so I don't know. I really like the Demon Hunters. I think they came out good. I think they fit the setting really well. And so those are the four paths in the art. And I think that again, this does a great job of sort of conveying what the game is about, conveying the mood of the game. There are these nice creepy hands in the background that are sort of writhing, and I think again that gives you the sense of the strange. And also the element of romance. You see that in the upper right corner, the fox spirit. That's not a scary image. I mean, there's a creepiness to it, but it's also kind of a sensual, possibly romantic image, and that's part of the stories that are in the Tales from a Chinese Studio. There's a lot of stories that are just, in some of the stories the ghosts want to kill you. In some of the stories the ghosts want to marry and have children with the protagonist, and the threat is really, either some other supernatural force or just the divide that exists between the two realms. So you have it. It's not just pure horror. There is horror for sure, but there's also just kind of bizarre, strange, unusual elements. Things like there's a lot of stories about animals that just sort of are super intelligent and talk, and sometimes they veer into horror when the animals become dangerous, but sometimes not. Sometimes they're just friendly animals. And there's a really great story in there about a snake charmer or a snake tamer who has a basket with two snakes that and it's basically a story about him and his snakes and how they sort of become spirited over time. But it's not a particularly scary story. It's just about a guy who really likes his snakes and befriends them, and it's kind of the heart of the story is the friendship between this guy and his special snakes. So I tried to get a lot of that in there too, and so obviously the horror is going to be a big driving factor for gaming purposes, but there's if you we have 4 adventures in here, and if you look at the adventures, not all of them are particularly scary. Some of them are, have a little bit of humor. They have romance. They have other elements, and so I think again the cover kind of captures that. And I think this towering figure in the center that sort of gets the painted maiden image is just really very effective. So so this is the cover art. Again, it was by Jackie Musto, and she's going to be doing the interior art as well, and we're also going to have new borders that she'll be doing for it, because I want to give the Strange Tales line its own look, and so I have some ideas for the borders. We'll see if we can pull them off. Border art is always a challenge because it looks nice, but it can create layout hurdles that you have to worry about. So I'm trying to approach the borders differently this time, and so I just don't have to worry about that issue, and we'll see if it's possible. I don't know, but one of the nice things about this is when you like I'm not a particularly great art director. I probably have very confusing instructions because it's not my background, but Jackie's been very good at sort of finding what I'm trying to do and getting it on the page and adding something that I wasn't expecting. And one of the things I like though is that every once in a while you come upon these challenges. They're not challenges. You have a problem that you need an answer for, and I find that those are the times that my skill level increases a little bit. Either because I learn, there's not really a solution that solution worked badly, or I find a really cool way to sort of get around an issue, and it enhances the books. So I think I don't know what the time frame for this is going to be. I'm still play testing it. I mean, I have a lot of material. I could, if I really needed to, I could release a game for this tomorrow. But I'm really sort of paring things down. I'm trying to make it more of a toolbox, more of a, because again, it's 100 pages, so I don't want to go crazy with a lot of the other elements. I have to be really careful, and so the emphasis is going to be on adventure material, on mechanics, on monsters, on things like that. I didn't want to go nuts with the other stuff, and so I don't know what the time frame is going to be. We're gonna be developing the interior art, and we're going to be developing the game further. Some of the concepts I've been not revising, but I've been refining, and I think that we're in a really good place with a lot of the concepts. I've blogged about sort of the escape from hell idea and some other things, and then when I've taken that a little bit further in my own thinkings about my own sort of thoughts about it. But we're gonna. I don't know. I think realistically, what's probably gonna happen is I'll probably be playtesting this pretty heavily the next 2 to 3 months, and we'll see what happens from there. And I mean, I definitely would like to have the game released this year. I think that's doable. And I would say the earliest people are going to see it would probably be sometime in the summer. I don't know. That's probably a little overly optimistic. It might, again, I was really eager to get out House of Paper Shadows for the fall, and I didn't predict the timeline well, and so House of Paper Shadows is coming out within the next month or so. But if I could, maybe getting this one out at least in time for Halloween would be good. But again, we'll see. It could be done way earlier. Our schedule's a little funky. I don't plan things so that everything comes out exactly when and what time I want it. It's sort of it's more by feel. And I like it that way. I used to do things on a tight, sort of rigid schedule, and I don't like operating that way. And sometimes that's annoying, but I think it's ultimately better for the final book. And again, I think our books could be more perfect than they are. They're not perfect by any stretch. But they definitely would be a lot worse if I was trying to keep everything on a tight schedule. And so I just know that from experience. I know that for the way I work and the way I like to do things, I need to give myself that flexibility. But they do come out, and so I'm really pleased with this art. I think it's a great image. I love the ghost. I was particularly concerned about the ghost when we came up with the idea, because ghosts are hard. You could especially when you want one like we have here, where it wasn't meant to be extremely supernatural looking, just a vaguely supernatural ghost, but I wanted it to be recognizably human, and it came out exactly, I think, as we needed it to. So we'll see what happens going forward, and I'll have regular updates. I'm going to continue with the Wuxia inspiration podcast. I will have probably a discussion on some of my thoughts about some things that happened in chapter 6 of Return of Condor Heroes, because we've done the Return of Condor Heroes podcast where Kenny and I just talk about the 5 chapters at a time. And because I'm going over the chapters more slowly than I normally would, I'm thinking about things, and so I'm making a point of trying to get my thoughts out in writing more, and so I had some thoughts there. We'll see if people find them useful or not, but I had some thoughts about the role of martial heroes in Wuxia settings and how Wuxia settings have evolved and to accommodate that, and I tie it to gaming. Because it's a subject that does come up in gaming. You see it around sort of topics like, how would having 16th level wizards affect, a society? So I think that question has been answered in Wuxia. So I will be back on, and again, this is by Jackie Musto. She has a great Kickstarter out, by the way, called and I hope I don't get this wrong because I'm just doing these off the cuff, but I believe it's The Hidden Halls of Hazakor. I will post a link in the description, and if I don't, let me know, because I'm horrible at remembering to post all the links, I promise, in my descriptions. But it's a really great looking game, and I think it's fully funded now, so I think they're all set to go. But I'm pretty sure you can probably still get involved, because I think that, with I'm not as up to date on Kickstarter as a lot of people, but I'm pretty sure the way it works is you can continue to fund something, and into the stretch goals and stuff. So I would definitely check that out. It's sort of designed for beginning dungeon masters and also for younger dungeon masters, and it's done with the aim of a lot, especially now, like my own books. A lot of books that come out, they don't assume that you're a beginner, and so and I had this experience when I was first gaming, because even back then, a lot of the games, they might have sort of a brief section on what is a role-playing game, but a lot of them kind of assumed that you knew what, if you bought like a Batman RPG, you probably had already played D&D or something. But I think that the hobby has developed for so long that sometimes that's a forgotten aspect of the games. And it's not the focus, like even in a game as big as D&D, they still need to sort of address that, but it's not the focus. They're not, the game is still sort of meant, I think, for people that are experienced. And so the Hidden Halls of Hazakor sort of is meant to walk you through the process more, and so I think it'll be useful to people. And the art looks really nice. Like I've seen the art on the Kickstarter page and some of the stuff they sent me when I did an interview on the blog for them, and it's really I don't know, I like Jackie's style, and I think it works for this type of project. It works really good. So I will be back on again. If you haven't been following us on the podcast, I'm going to be posting this both on the podcast site and on the Bedrock blog page. Go to our Podbean and follow us, because every Friday we do a Wuxia podcast. Every like twice a week, me and Adam talk about various TV shows and media. Right now we're doing Babylon 5, but we're almost done, and we're going to have another show lined up after that. And I also have other things that are up there. I put up my session logs. I put up my Wuxia inspiration talks. Kenny and I have been doing the Return of Condor Heroes discussions. That's also on Fridays. And so there's a lot of content on the Podbean if you go there and you follow it. And I've noticed that we've been getting more followers, and we've been slowly building an audience. But the heart of our Podbean site, or our Podbean podcast, is the Friday Night Wuxia stuff. And sometimes we veer outside of Wuxia into other genres, but it's still mainly sort of Friday Night Wuxia. We tend to focus on classic Wuxia because that's sort of more so me and Lady Chao Feng, that's sort of more our comfort zone. That's the kind of stuff that we tend to lean on. I also like 90s stuff though, and so we get that every once in a while, and every so often we do a newer movie as well. I do like newer movies. I just am if I when I watch this stuff, I do tend to watch the stuff from the 70s and the stuff from the 80s and 90s more. Every 5 to 10 movies I'll watch a newer one. In part because I'm waiting for the newer ones to come out, but also I don't know, I'm a little bit sort of more a fan of the earlier stuff. I think to me actually it's funny, and I don't want to sort of go on a ramble here, but my favorite period in terms of physical performance is probably the 90s. But my favorite period in terms of storytelling, in terms of sort of the way things were done and the way things were shot, and is that 70s period. That 70s period is there's something magical about it for me. So we talk about everything, and we're trying to do more newer stuff, because I do want people to sort of I know with fans, it's easy if you're a fan of 70s martial arts movies, you'll watch it. But if you're just interested and you haven't really explored it, sometimes you need to see some of the newer stuff, because it's just it's like a stepping stone into these, to the older stuff. When I first got into it, it was, like really grainy old martial arts movies. So I don't mind if something looks old fashioned or if it looks faded, but it can be a challenge. And so sometimes the newer, shinier stuff is a good stepping stone. So anyways, I will be back on, and I will talk to you later.